All right, so welcome back, everyone. It's so good to see all of you again. And we'll be starting, again with from the scratch, right? So whatever we had covered in the previous sections, right, of the previous demo sessions that we have, uh, we'll just quickly try to cover that again. I know all of you already know about it, so we'll just glide past through it. But then again, we need to start from the basics again. So as you know, right, as we had discussed, the flow of the course, I'll just quickly discuss once again with you, right? So it's easy to understand for everybody. Now, I hope my screen is visible. Yes.
Yes, Shreyash.
So as we had discussed, right, the flow of concepts or the flow of the sections that we'll be covering will start from Azure fundamentals. Then we'll move towards Azure data fundamentals, right? Now, Azure fundamentals is where we are going to cover the basics of Azure. Yes. So we'll see a lot of things here. We'll see, what is cloud computing, what is the Azure architecture, how is Azure built, how is, the data center built, what is uh, within a data center, right? Racks and servers you already know, but you don't know that racks are known as fault domains and servers are known as update domains. So why do we call them, fault domains and update domains? What's the reason behind that? All of that we'll cover here. We'll also see, the more important concepts of what is an Azure tenant, what is a subscription, what is a management group, what is a resource group, what is a resource manager, right? And that is where we also try to cover what is a resource manager template. Once we are done with that, we'll talk, somewhat basics about the security on Azure, right? We'll try to see how you're going to configure Microsoft Entra ID to give permissions, to give role-based access control to somebody, right? We'll try to create a user as well. So a quick, I would say a quick introduction to, identity and access management, which basically is a part of security within Azure, right? And we'll see what all other features are there to, secure your environment. And then we'll see some governance related tools, also some cost related considerations also as to how you're going to, because see, as a data engineer, when you're creating solutions, right, one of the most important thing that you have to keep in mind is the cost effectiveness of your solution, right? Because that is what organizations will be looking for. Organizations will be looking for somebody who can, work on cloud economics. So cloud economics is not, I think it's something, which has been upcoming recently, and it's one of the most important aspects of cloud computing now, where we talk about, basically how to create resources which are cost effective, how to create, an infrastructure which is cost effective, what are the different ways in which you can manage the cost. So that also we'll try to understand what are different ways. And one thing that we regularly try to do is we'll always see these two terms, right? Security plus cost, right? So we'll always discuss this before every section, right? So when we start Synapse, we'll see how you can manage security, how you can manage cost. When we start with storage account, we'll see how you can manage security of your storage account, how you can manage the cost. Similarly with the Azure Data Factory, similarly with Spark Pool, similarly with Databricks, right? So we'll try to always go into the depth of how you're going to manage the cost, right? What are the different ways in which you can reduce your cost so that you have an idea, whenever you're going to work with a resource, whenever you're going to create a resource, you know two things for sure. And that is one of, first of all, how to secure this particular resource, right? What are the different security considerations that you need to have in your mind? And then obviously how you can manage the cost of that resource also, right? So that will also be one of the major concepts that we'll be looking at. Then, uh, see, ideally, we used to have just Azure fundamentals, where we used to talk about everything right? Which is, the basics of Azure now. But then I realized that I need to break it down into multiple pieces so that, it is easier for everybody to understand. And not just ease of understanding, but also, it is helping me to structure this course in a much more better manner, I would say, right? To create this new section of data fundamentals. Now, some of you will know that data fundamentals already exist. There is nothing new about it, correct? But then when you're working with Azure fundamentals, storage and all those things, right, which is related to storage of data and all, they are a part of Azure fundamentals itself, right? So for those of you who do not understand what I'm talking about, Microsoft offers certifications, right? And these certifications from Microsoft, right, they are divided into three layers, right? The first, the second, and the third. The first layer is your fundamentals layer, right? The second is an associate layer, and the third is an expert level certification, right? So the moment I say fundamental level certification, Microsoft offers three very basic fundamentals of certifications. All right. Associate, I don't have an exact number, but there are multiple associate certificates also. I'll tell you certain examples. And then for expert also, this is like the third level, or if this is L1, this is L2, and then this is L3 of certification. Now, when you talk about fundamentals, Microsoft itself offers three fundamental certificates to you. One, AZ 900, second, DP 900, and the third is AI 900. Now, these certificates are really easy to get. These certificates basically showcase your fundamental understanding of, Azure as a cloud platform. When you talk about AZ 900, that is your Microsoft Azure fundamentals. All right. This is your Azure data fundamentals. And this is your Azure AI fundamentals, right? So as the name suggests, AZ 900 covers everything basic about Azure. All right. So for example, those of you who worked with AWS or any other cloud, service provider, you would know you have, in AWS, you have cloud practitioner. Yes, all those certifications, which is the fundamentals. And then in GCP also, you have some fundamental level certifications. Similarly, Azure offers these three certifications that you as an individual or you as a user can apply for. All right. Now, if you take a look at all of these three certifications, they are valid for life. All right. You don't have to ever renew these certificates. These certificates showcase your foundational understanding of cloud computing from Azure. All right. If you are aware of the entire Azure fundamentals or the foundations of Azure, right, the basics of Azure cloud, then you go for AZ 900. The moment you go to DP 900, you start talking everything related to data only. All right. So this is where you will try to understand on cloud what all different data roles are there. For example, there is a database administrator. There is something called as a data engineer. There is something called as a data analyst. There is something called as a data scientist. So what are the differentiation, right? How are these different roles, different from one another? So that kind of understanding to develop, we'll try to see there. Then the basic concepts of data, right? How many types of data are there? Structured, semi-structured, unstructured. Then what all Azure services are available to store each type of data, right? So for structured data, we have the SQL databases. For semi-structured, we have the NoSQL Cosmos DB, right? For your unstructured data, we have the storage account and the data lake. So that we'll try to cover in the data fundamental section. That is why I have divided, right? So that it aligns with the certification also, right? because in future I want anybody who wants to go for AZ 900 or DP 900, right? You should be able to do it with ease without having to prepare anything except being a part of this class, right? So the foundational understanding, that is my responsibility. I'll build it up for you, and you can go ahead and write these certifications easily. And trust me, they're fairly easy certificates to get. How you going to write the certificate, what you need, what to, how do you register for it, how do you, schedule it, how many different ways are there to write the exam, the online mode, the offline mode, because it's a proctored exam, right, conducted by Microsoft, not literally by Microsoft. There's a partner. Pearson View is Microsoft's partner in conducting these certifications across the globe, right? So if anybody's interested, uh, post the sessions, right? Once we are done with the basics, once we are done with the fundamentals. If you're interested in doing these certifications, you do please let me know, and we'll connect separately to discuss how you're going to go about it, right? So Azure fundamentals and data fundamentals, and then you have AI fundamentals. That is a separate thing altogether, which talks about everything related to AI on Azure, right? The AI resources, everything that you can do with those resources, right? That is all the part of AI 900. So we'll not keep that in mind. Now, as somebody who's now going to, learn about Azure technologies, you should also understand that there are associate level certifications also, like AZ 104. So this is your Microsoft Azure Administrator Associate. All right. So this certification is for people who want to become an Azure administrator, cloud administrator, cloud engineer, right? Somebody who wants to showcase their skills, that we are able to administer the Azure cloud, we are able to manage it, and this is where you learn more in depth about different resources, uh, about compute resources, about app service, about databases, right? And then administration in general, right? Governance, monitoring, security, all of that you cover in the associate level certification. So AZ 104, Azure Administrator is one of it. Then you have AZ 204, which is the Developer Associate. So this is Microsoft Azure Developer Associate certification. So this is for people who want to, become a cloud developer, right? Who wants to develop applications, deploy them on the cloud. So this is for them, right? Then you have other certifications like DP 300, the database administrator. You have AZ 500 also, which is the Azure security engineer. So if you want to become a cloud security specialist, you go for AZ 500. If you are into networking, you go for AZ 700. So this is the network engineer associate. So like this, we have the certifications divided. Then in expert level, we have AZ 305, which is your solutions architect. You have AZ 400, which is your DevOps associate, right? So similarly, these are the levels in which the certification is divided. Now, back in the day, we used to have DP 203, which was the Azure Data Engineer Associate certification, but they have discontinued this particular certification, and they've launched another one, which is your DP 700, which has everything to do about fabrics. We'll see what fabric is, right? But as of now, it's just an attempt from Microsoft to launch this certification, create that buzz around fabric, so that organizations now try to adapt to it. But trust me, I worked with fabric. It's not that great. The services that is present on Azure, your synapse, Azure Data Factory, those are the services which I can guarantee you that they will continue to work, right? And organizations will continue to stick with those services, except instead of the this fabric which is coming along, right? So that is good. Uh, Once you are done with the foundations, right? So in the data fundamentals, as I said, you will learn about storage. How do you store it in Azure? You'll talk about databases. Yes, the SQL databases, the NoSQL databases, Cosmos DB, Azure SQL database, everything we'll cover here. How you create them, how you secure them, right? Then we'll also see uh, some tools that we are going to use, right? Now, This is where we'll just have a quick understanding of different tools which are used for data processing and data transformation. So this is where we'll have a brief discussion on Synapse, we'll have a brief discussion on Data Factory, on Stream Analytics, on Databricks, HD Insight, right? Even though HD Insight is not a part of this course, but we'll quickly just get to know what this particular service is all about. One more thing that we're going to do in Azure Fundamentals is we're going to look at services, different services, compute services. We'll try to create a virtual machine. We'll try to create a Windows virtual machine. We'll try to create a Linux virtual machine. We'll try to create an app service plan for you, right? To show you how you're going to go ahead and create these different services on the cloud, right? Once you're done with this, both of them, we'll have a session on security, right? So basics of security also we'll do. Once you're done with this, whatever resources you've seen, how you're going to secure those resources, what are the different ways, how do you manage access to them, how do you define role-based access control, right? And once done with this, we'll move towards our data engineering workloads. And this data engineering workload will start with, first of all, Synapse. We'll try to understand what Synapse is all about. What is the service? What is the history? How it came, right? Why was it needed? And then we'll see the different pools that are there within Synapse, the SQL pools. There are two SQL pools. One is serverless and one is dedicated. We'll see what serverless SQL pool is, right? Actually, that is where we'll try to understand the concept of exploratory data analysis, right? So exploring the data. If I don't want to load the data somewhere, if I don't want to store the data, I just want to read it, I just want to run some queries on it, how am I going to do that, right? So that is something that we call as an exploratory data analysis, just trying to explore the data. And we'll do that using the serverless SQL pool. And then we'll go on to the dedicated SQL pool. We'll try to understand what that is. So see, if it sounds confusing as of now, trust me, these services are fairly easy to understand. And anybody with the basic understanding of SQL will have no problem in understanding what they actually do, what is the difference, and also, why are they required? Somebody may say, why is serverless SQL pool required, right? Once we are done with that, you will see that in the serverless SQL pool, you can either use open row set or you can just create these external tables. And when you create an external table, the data movement does not happen, right? The data movement does not happen. You'll be able to visualize the data. You will be able to see the data in the form of a table, but data does not move. Data stays in the source itself. So why is that required? Why don't we just move the data and use it? So all of that basics we'll try to understand. We'll go to dedicated SQL pool then. We'll try to figure out what dedicated SQL pool is, right? So that is where we'll also understand the SQL data warehouse. We'll try to understand the importance of warehousing, right? Why is it required? Why can we not have data present in my SQL database itself, right? Why do I need to create a data warehouse? And that is where you will have to understand the concepts of OLAP, right? The OLAP systems and the OLTP systems. So that also we'll discuss along the way in that particular section itself. Once we are done with this in Synapse, we'll then move towards Spark pool, right? But eventually we'll not move towards it, right? This is something which will be skipping, right? So when I say skip, we will cover it later. But Spark pool requires understanding of Spark architecture along with PySpark, right? Because when you create a Spark pool, that is nothing but creating Spark architecture. They need to understand what Spark architecture is, how it works, how the data processing happens in Spark. And obviously, PySpark you need to know in order to process that data, right? So this is a section that we'll cover separately towards the end of this course. Right before Databricks, we'll have a session on Spark and PySpark, and then we'll move towards Spark Pool and Databricks, right? Apart from this, we'll see that you have an option available within Synapse to create pipelines, right? And these pipelines are very similar to the pipelines that you will see in Data Factory. So this will be a starting point of creating pipelines. And once you're okay with creating these pipelines, we'll move towards Data Factory. So within Data Factory, as we discussed, we'll try to create a lot of things. We'll see pipelines, we'll see different types of transformations using the pipelines. right? We'll see data flows, yes, mapping data flow. We'll see something called as self-hosted integration runtime within Data Factory. We'll see Git integration also. We'll see incremental data loading as well, right? With my Data Factory using the concept of either CDC, right? The change data capture feature, which is available within Data Factory, or within the pipelines, we'll just implement tumbling window. So tumbling window is a trigger, right? That lets you to do incremental data loading. All right. So once we are done with all of this within Data Factory, right, we create a lot of pipelines, all different sources connecting to all different sort of destinations, all different types of activities, right? What are the different activities? How you create a new column? How do you filter existing columns? All of that we'll see within Data Factory. SHIR is something that we'll see when we want to connect to an on-premise system. Yes. Git integration is something which we'll try to understand, obviously, again. This is where you will understand how, we integrate my Data Factory resources with GitHub, right? And how many of you have had experience of working with GitHub? Do we have people here who worked with GitHub before or are working with GitHub, who know what it actually is, what it is used for? I'll just quickly tell you something. I don't expect you to unmute yourselves, right? I do understand that, everybody might not be comfortable in unmuting themselves and speaking in the class, but you are always welcome to the meeting chat and write down the answers to the questions that I'm asking, right? I need to make sure, right, before I move on to the next topic, that everybody who's present in the class uh, has understood the existing concept, right? So that is why I have a habit of asking a lot of questions in the class, and I want you to make it a habit of answering those questions in the class, right? So everybody, it's a humble request. Please be attentive in the class. Make running notes. Yes, obviously you will have access to the videos and you will get documents as well, PDF documents. But then again, nothing replaces a very well written hand note, right? Your running notes that you are going to prepare. And that is going to help you whenever you want to revise a particular concept or a particular section, right? Let's say before an interview, you just want to go through what all you had covered in Data Factory. So you can do that, right? So, and if you're not comfortable in putting your question or putting your answer, be visible for everybody, then you can see in the chat option, there is an option to send a chat dedicatedly to me, right? Please do that. If sometimes I've seen, I've taught a lot of students, and I understand that, sometimes people are hesitant as to if I should be putting this question out there, right? What if it's a silly question? How would others think? How would others react? But I think we're past that age now. We're all working professionals. We're all, coming here because we want to learn. And considering that all of us are new, all of us do not have any experience, we are bound to ask silly questions. So please don't hesitate. Put your questions in the chat window. Uh, I would suggest to put it in the chat window rather than unmuting yourselves, because that, should not break the flow of the class. Obviously, you're welcome to unmute also if there is something that, requires urgent attention. In that case, you can unmute yourselves and you can ask your question. But then again, the chat window is always open. I always have an extra monitor ready for chat. So that is something that I want to see. Keep moving. The chat should keep on moving, and you should be answering all the questions that I've been asking, right? At least somebody. If there are situations where you will know the answer, but you are, too lazy to answer it in the chat window, please don't do that. Uh, let's try to make it an interactive session both for you and for myself also. So that is there. And yes, so one more thing we'll do is we'll have a weekly quiz, right? I'll come to that later on. So that is also something new that I have introduced now. Data Factory, Understood? All of this will be covered. Incremental data loading through tumbling window or CDC, Git integration. So for those of you who do not know GitHub, it's a version control system. It is, to track changes to your code. It is used something which is used to, track who made changes, when was the changes made, what changes were made, right? So that you have a history of your code always available. So that if there is any, let's say, changes made to the code, which make it not work, then you can obviously go back to a historical version and restore to a particular point, right? So it's just a code versioning system, I would say, which keeps a track of your code, right? To see if multiple people or multiple developers in a team are working on the same code base, then it really becomes important to understand as to who's making what changes where, right? So GitHub allows you to do that. But then I also told you yesterday that Data Factory is a no-code, low-code solution. Correct. So why do we need GitHub with a low-code, no-code solution? That should also come in your mind as to what is the need of creating this. It's okay, yeah, creating GitHub repository for a Data Factory resource. What will be stored there? If I do not write the code in Data Factory, then what is going to be stored in GitHub, right? So that is also something very interesting. We'll try to see, and then we'll close Data Factory, right? Once you're done with this, then we'll move towards stream analytics. And this is a service where we'll come to that. Yes, we'll discuss everything. What is the difference between Synapse and a data factory? Yes, both of them are, your data processing tools which help you with the ETL process. Both of them help you with the ETL process. All right. Synapse also helps you to extract, transform, load, extract, load, transform, right? Both of them. And then we'll discuss in detail as to what is the difference. Stream analytics, on the other hand, uh, we'll first try to understand what is streaming data, what is the streaming data source. Yes. What are the services in Azure that handle streaming data, such as Event Hub? So we create an Event Hub also. Event Hub in general is a part of your AZ 204 certification, right? Your developer associate, where you are creating applications. But we'll have a comprehensive understanding of Event Hub, because when you're working with streaming data, you need a service that is going to streamline that entire streaming process, right? Because, for example, Data Factory, right? Or for example, the stream analytics service itself, right? This stream analytics service that you see, it's a data processing service. All right. So stream analytics is a data processing service which processes data in real time. But then again, stream analytics service does not have any inbuilt storage available. There is no storage. So what stream analytics need, let's say this is a warehouse. This warehouse has a lot of sensors, and these sensors are constantly sending data to the stream analytics service. Now, stream analytics service is receiving such huge amounts of data and it's not able to store it somewhere, right? Ideally, it should be processed within seconds, right? In real time. So in real time also, sometimes one data may arrive, the second data may arrive, after that. And the processing sometimes, let's say, it takes 30 seconds, 10 seconds, 5 seconds to process. But for those 5 seconds, where am I going to store this data, right? So stream analytics needs a service running in between of these data sources, right? Or these streaming data sources, such as the sensors that we've discussed, or the IoT devices. And what they will do is they will now start sending all of these data to a service called as an event hub. Event hub will start collecting all the different events. Then you can partition them also based on the type of event, right? And then Event Hub will fetch, or Event Hub will give this data to Stream Analytics service in a proper way. So this is the entire structure. So we'll try to understand this also, right? As to how this works, we'll see different destinations. We'll try to write different queries. We'll work with the sample data which is present within Event Hub, and we'll try to understand how your Stream Analytics service runs, which is basically comprising of only three steps. One, you have to define the input of the data, where is the data going to come from. The second is the output of the data. Once you've processed the data, where is the data going to go? And the third is the query itself. This is what you are going to process, what the processing that you're going to do on the data, right? So that will be defined by the query that you're going to write. Clear? So very simple again. And then, uh, we'll move towards Python. So for a couple of days, we'll try to understand the basics of Python. All right. Now, this basics of Python is where you will see a lot of things. You will see different data collections, right? Data collections. Can somebody name different Python data collections that you know about? Data collection means some any the how many ways you can store collection of data within using Python.
List, tuple, set, dictionary.
List, yes. Tuples, set, dictionary. Absolutely correct. So these are different, data collections that you can have within Python. We'll see what, very basics. We'll see how do you declare a variable, how do you write functions, right? And basic understanding of Python we'll try to develop here, right? How you work with strings within Python, how do you work with, you know, mathematical functions, right? So all of that, once we are done, we'll move towards PySpark. All right. Now, PySpark, we are going to cover actually because we need to understand, right? First of all, that the moment you start working with Spark architecture, right? Once you're done with the Spark architecture, that is the point where you need to have an understanding of how you're going to talk to that Spark architecture, right? How you're going to give instructions to the Spark architecture, right? Once you understand this, the Spark infrastructure or the architecture that we're talking about, then we'll start talking about the APIs, right? APIs, different APIs which are available, which help you to interact with the Spark architecture. If you want to run a job, how you're going to do that, everything you're going to do here. Now, this particular section, again, will have a lot of, I would say, subsections in it, right? We'll start with the very basics of how you're going to read data using PySpark. All right. Now, reading data will mean both reading data, which is present, let's say, in any data lake, a CSV file is present, or when you're working with Databricks, right? You have the DBFS storage, where the data is present in the DBFS storage. How you're going to read the data? How you're going to create a data frame, right? So the data frame API is something that we are going to cover in depth. Clear? So how you're going to read data, how you're going to, let's say, write data to a particular destination, what are the different data analysis and transformations that you're going to do, such as, let's say, selecting a particular column, right? Renaming columns, adding new columns, changing the data type of existing columns, right? Math functions, sorting using PySpark, right? Working with strings using PySpark, working with date and time using PySpark, right? Uh, Filter data frames, conditional statements, Yes, uh, removing columns, all of this, right? Grouping data frames together, right? Joining data frames, union of data frames, right? So all of this we'll try to understand. We'll first of all obviously try to understand what is a data frame, right? What is the Spark table and what is the Spark data frame? That difference we'll try to understand. The metadata store in terms for a metadata catalog, what is the difference between them, right? And that table is persistent data frame is created during the session. Once your Spark session ends, the data frame is destroyed. All of that understanding we'll try to create within this particular section itself.
Yeah, and this one, whatever you said in PySpark, it looks like
Mhm.
all the things in Pandas library. Is it the same? This going to be covered in PySpark, or is there going to
Uh,
be something other than that?
so that is like the different transformations. Apart from this, how do you read data? How do you write data? How do you do different types of processing? How do you connect to different data stores using PySpark? All of that we're going to do. All right.
Yeah, exactly. Like whatever you say, it's look like Pandas, so it's going to be the same like Pandas, right? Like the grouping, the
It's going to be
joins, the
similar. That
union.
it's, yes, yes,
Okay,
it's going to be similar.
filtering and like the from
Yes,
the
yes,
data frame, right?
yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. How
Right.
long this
So
will go? Like Python to PySpark? Sorry, like how many
this is
classes?
going to be a major section. So we can expect around 5 to 6 classes in this particular section itself. Right? Because PySpark, Databricks is something, which I want everybody to have an in-depth understanding of, right? When it comes to the medallion architecture or when it comes to Hive metastore, databases, tables, the lake house, right?
Yeah.
So once, as I said, we are done with the PySpark, right? We'll move towards Databricks, right? And within Databricks, again, we'll have a lot of discussion. First of all, we'll try to understand the whole Databricks workspace itself, right? What it is, how is it like, and then some basic functionalities. Whatever we've learned within PySpark, right? Most of that we'll be implementing within Databricks itself, right? So reading, writing data, and data analysis. All of these PySpark classes, we'll try to do it within our Databricks environment. And once we're done with that, as I said, we'll go to the medallion architecture. We'll try to understand what that is, the bronze, silver, and the gold layer, right? How that works, and how do you create visualizations? How do you create dashboards with help of Databricks? We'll also try to understand what is Hive Metastore, what is a lake house, right? What is Delta Live tables within Databricks? How do you know, one second. Yeah. So how do you, create a Delta Live table or the pipelines within Databricks? Then we'll talk about the Spark structured streaming autoloader within Databricks, the access control list, the Databricks CLI, right? Source control with Databricks, CI/CD with Databricks, all of it. Databricks jobs as well. How do you define a job and how do you run a job? All of that we'll try to cover here in this particular section of Databricks. All right, so Databricks, I would say, is going to be a major section along with Synapse and Data Factory, right? Stream Analytics, it's comparatively a smaller section with respect to others, right? If you want to say the biggest is going to be, first of all, the Azure fundamentals and the data fundamentals section. The second would be Databricks, third, Synapse and Data Factory, right? And then finally, you will have this particular Stream Analytics, right? So I hope the course structure is understood to everybody, because towards the end, we'll also talk about security of data, right? We'll also talk about how you're going to do the governance of your Azure environment, right? So governance and security, again, two concepts that we'll be seeing towards the final section, right? So that is an overall picture of what this entire section course will be divided into. As I said, monitoring also we'll see, right? Monitoring through Microsoft Purview. We'll try to see what is Microsoft Purview, how you create a Purview account, how do you connect Purview with your data lake, right? How do you work with Purview within Azure Synapse? How do you work with Purview within Azure Data Factory, right? So best practices for data storage within the data lake, the access tiers, all of that we'll have a complete understanding of. We'll see what is Azure Monitor, how can you set alert rules within Data Factory, right? What is Azure Data Factory logging, which is there again for as a monitoring tool, right? How do you monitor Synapse, right? There is something called as systems view within Synapse, the workload management within Synapse, right? The result set caching, all of that we'll try to understand. So I hope the course structure is clear to you, right? We'll be talking about core services, but on the same hand, right? On the same uh, place, we are going to also cover, as I said, monitoring, cost management, yes, and security. These three are going to be our major concerns, so that you get a complete understanding of not just a particular tool, right? Not just how Data Factory works and what it works with. How do I secure my Data Factory resource? How do I monitor my Data Factory resource? And obviously, how do I secure my Data Factory resource also, right? So once all of that is done, right? As I said, with a security standpoint also, what is uh, how do you authorize or how do you authenticate onto the data lake storage, right? How you can use Azure Storage Explorer, what is the data lake Gen 2 security, shared access signature, Microsoft Entra ID, role-based access control, right? Using the ACLs. So within data lake, you get a feature of something called as access control list. So what is that? How does it work, right? In within Synapse, you have something called as a column level security, row level security, right? Data masking within Synapse. Within Synapse, you have something called as a dedicated pool encryption also, right? Workspace encryption, Microsoft Entra ID, all within Synapse. All right. And then within your storage account, you have networking, firewall, uh, you have managed identities within your storage account. You have Synapse managed identity connectivity. You have data factory encryption. You have Databricks user secret scope setup, right? So all of that we'll try to cover within the security section of this particular course, right? Where we'll try to understand how you're going to secure your environment and the tools that you're working with. All right, so I hope I have created a high level picture in everybody's mind as to what you would expect from this particular course, right? Now, once that will be done, right? Once we are done with the all the sections of this course, we'll also spend some time on two projects, right? So as we had discussed, there are going to be two projects that we'll work on. The first one is going to be a Databricks project, which you will have to implement end to end. Now, for these projects, we'll have a first 1 hour connect where I will explain you the problem statement. Yes, once you have the problem statement in mind, I will also give you the architecture diagram. All right. So once you have the problem statement in hand and you have the architecture diagram that you need to implement, right? We'll create an Azure free account for you. We'll not create it for you, but we'll tell you how you create an Azure free account where you're going to practice this. If somebody wants an Azure Pass, they can contact us and we'll get it sorted for them, right? So once you have all of this in your hands, you're going to go for implementation. Now, this implementation, first of all, you will get around 7 days to implement it on your own, right? If you are facing issues with implementation, if you do not, if you're not able to implement it from your own end, which is going to be very surprising for me because the project I can after all everything that we have discussed in the class, I would expect everybody to be able to complete these projects uh, along with the problem statement and the architecture diagram. I will give you the data also, right? Whatever data you will be needing to implement that project. uh, Post the implementation, if you're done with it, good and fine. If you're not done with it, I will share you a guided document that will contain all the steps that you need to perform in order to complete that project. Now, this is going to be the same for the first project and the second project, which is going to be a general data engineering project, where you'll be covering a few topics. You'll be covering data factory also there. You'll be covering data lake also. You'll be covering Databricks also, and you'll be covering Synapse Analytics also. So this second project is going to be a mix of various services within Azure, and one project will be core on Databricks. Apart from that, as I said, I will be conducting from now onwards weekly quiz. So now weekly on Friday, we'll have 30 minutes reserved for quiz. So this will be a 15 question quiz based on whatever we have covered that week. So whatever content that we've covered in that particular week, this quiz will be based on that, and it will be hosted on Mentimeter. All right. So I'll all of you can attempt this quiz either by your using your desktop or by using your mobile phones, and it's very easy, right? We'll have it live in the class. Uh, I'll ask the question. We'll put the question on the board on the screen. We'll give you the options. You will have some 10 seconds to answer it, and then we'll move on towards the next question, and then we'll see as to who is topping the quiz every week. So we have this course, as I said, is a long course. It will go on for 40 plus days, right? Around 40 or 40 plus days. And that means that we'll be having a lot of weeks to conduct this quiz. And I mean, it's for you, right, to maintain the interactivity as well as, to make sure that you're revising everything that we are covering in the week, right? So it will be a time for you to come, prepared for whatever we have covered in that particular week, right? And let me tell you, it's not going to be an easy quiz, right? So if somebody is thinking it will be easy, it's not, right? So quiz will have project again given to you. The next thing are the labs itself. Now, these data engineering labs are from Scalable, which is a Microsoft vendor. All right. So Microsoft does not prepare the labs on their own. The labs belong to Microsoft. They've created the labs, but it is implemented and distributed by Scalable, right? Uh, so this is where what you will receive is a credential, right? The credential means a user ID along with a password, right? These two things you will receive. I will let you know the portal which you have to access in order to access the labs. As I said, labs have around, or the account will have around 22 labs. Each lab can be launched 10 times, right? And each lab once launched, can be launched 10 times. And one lab has a duration of 2 hours, right? So each lab, you can imagine 20 hours of practice you will get for each lab. And then if you multiply it by 22, that is the total number of hours that you will have the hands-on practice for. But apart from this, there are some challenge labs also, but challenge labs uh, will depend on the availability. All right, we do not commit the challenge labs. And if they're available, you can attempt those labs as well, right? Now, as I said, these labs will be valid for 60 days, right? And considering that, initial couple of weeks, right, we'll be spending on the fundamentals of Azure, where these labs are not useful because the whole implementation of these labs starts from data lake and Synapse. So once you're done with data lake and once you're done with Synapse, that is where you will actually need these labs. All right. That is where you will actually need, or you will actually be able to know. It's not about need, but you'll be actually able to understand what is asked in the lab and what you're doing in the lab, right? So that is why we are not going to give you the labs in the beginning itself, right? I will hand out these labs for with you, or these labs to you once we are working with Synapse. Once we start working with Synapse, that is when the labs will be given to you and the 60-day counter will start, right? Now, sometimes there may be some problem while accessing the labs. You don't have to worry. You just inform the backend team that you are unable to access the labs. All right. So if any access related issue happens with the labs, you just inform the backend team. So let's say you were not able to access the lab for 2 days, right? So then this validity will become 62 days, 62 days for you. All right. So you don't have to worry about any lost time. If you are losing any time due to unaccessibility of the lab environment, in that case, we will increase the lab duration for all of you. Clear? So that is, I think, the overall structure of the course of what we are going to do, what we are going to cover. And I wanted to, not I wanted to take the first class and explain it to you so that you have an idea as to what is expected and what we'll be going to cover in the next, not few, but a lot of weeks that we are together on this particular journey of data engineering on Azure, right? So I hope the doubts are clear now regarding how the course is going to be structured and how we're going to go about it. Is that correct? Everybody understood? So now, uh, I just wanted to take this first class to get all of this cleared out, right? Because um, sometimes the students will ask in the beginning of the session itself, when do we get the recordings? And yes, the recordings also. So those of you, everybody I think has registered now, and you would receive, right? You would have received the access to the LMS portal, and within that LMS portal, you will have your course details, and you will find all your recordings day wise updated there, right? So tonight's class, you can expect the recording to be uploaded there by next day. All right. So within 24 hours, I believe it is done much before that, but the SLA that I would give you is 24 hours. Just wait for 24 hours and the recording will be uploaded. All right. So you'll find all the recordings there along with the PDF notes also. You will find the PDF notes as well. So if you have any issues while accessing the LMS portal, again, you can contact the backend team, right? You have their numbers. You've been having a discussion with all of them. So with that, we'll close the first day's session, right? Uh, and it's weekend, so we'll be meeting again on Monday now. So Monday is when we'll be starting this journey on Azure data engineering. So thank you everyone for being a part of this journey, and we're going to have a good time. Trust me. I'll make sure that all these concepts are clear to you. You become pros when it comes to data engineering on Azure. Anybody asks any questions uh, from Synapse, from Databricks, from Data Factory, I'll make sure that you're in a position to answer each and every question. All right. So that is the kind of in-depth analysis or the coverage of the topics, or making these uh, concepts that you may think are hard. I'll try to break it down and make it really easy for you. And the good part is, once it becomes easy to understand and you're having fun implementing it, whether in the labs or with the free account that you're going to create, you will start enjoying, right? The moment you create, let's say, a pipeline and you're able to see that it is working absolutely as you intended. It is picking up the data from the source, it is doing the transformation, and then it is putting the data to the destination. Once that starts working, right, you will also get a lot of motivation to build more pipelines, to write more scripts, to create more, you know um, one second. Yeah. So we'll do that. Yeah. So thanks. Thanks a lot, everyone. I'll see you
Shreyas,
guys again. Yeah.
Vamsi and Nageshwari raised a hand. Can you please ask them?
Yeah, go ahead.
Shreyas.
Yeah.
So for the data engineering certification path, can we skip the AZ 900 and directly take the DP 900 certification?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, you can do that. But then see, uh, AZ 900 talks about basics of cloud, right? You can skip the certification. There is no prerequisite for DP 900. It does not say that you have to take AZ 900 first and then you go to DP 900. No, nothing like that. There are only a couple of certifications, right? For example, solutions architect, which requires a particular certificate, as a prerequisite. But apart from that, most of the certifications in Azure, they don't require. Even if you go to associate level, let's say 104, you're writing administrator associate, it's not mandatory to have AZ 900 or DP 900, right? So you can directly write it, but you cannot prepare for data fundamentals without first preparing for Azure fundamentals. So you need to know what Azure is, then only
Yeah,
it will
got it.
become easier for you
So, like,
to.
how many days does it take to complete the Azure fundamentals and data fundamentals in our course?
In our course, we,
Like 2 weeks or,
see,
how many
yes,
days?
that is what. So when it comes to the certification, right? For example, AZ 900, we'll cover almost 70 to 80% of the content which is asked in the exam. Clear? 70 to 80% of the content we'll cover, right? When it comes to data fundamentals, again, we'll cover around 80 to 85% of the exam syllabus. There are certain topics which are not important, right? It's better that you study about them,
So the thing
self-study.
is, actually, I have scheduled the DP 900 test for the 13th of March. So I just want to make sure.
Yeah, so see, anyways, if you scheduled it, you can always reschedule it. You have a 24-hour window to reschedule any Microsoft certification. If you want help with that, I can help you, right? You don't have to do anything, you just have to reach out. I hope you would have scheduled it using Pearson View.
Yeah, I did.
Yes, Pearson View, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
for Pearson View, I can help you with it. If you want to reschedule it also, it's fine, but most probably by 13th, we'll be done with it.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Yeah. So just remember, you have a 24-hour period, right? So 24 hours before the exam, you have the freedom to reschedule it.
Got it.
And you
Thank
can reschedule it n number of times. That is also there.
Okay.
All right. All right then, guys. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Shreyas, I have a question.
Yes, Suresh. Yes, Suresh.
In addition to you upload the daily class videos, so do you have any notes for each and every class you will put in Google
Yes.
Drive?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. We'll be
Okay.
sharing the PDF notes also.
Okay.
All right. Okay then. Thank you, everyone. Have a happy weekend, and we'll meet again on Monday. Thanks a lot, guys.